Welcome, seekers of forgotten wonders. I'm Osric the Tale-Binder, and today we turn our attention from spectral hunts and fairy bargains to a tale of strategy, wisdom, and an unexpected legacy that persists to this day. This game of kings and queens, of strategy and foresight, chess, has captivated minds for centuries. Its origins lie in ancient India, its evolution shaped by Persian, Arabic, and eventually European influences. But nowhere in the world has this game become so deeply woven into the identity of a community as in one small German village. Ströbeck, a modest settlement in what is now the Harz region of Germany. Today, it is known as the Chess Village, where children learn the game alongside their letters, where giant chessboards stand in the town square, and where a centuries-old tradition of chess excellence continues unbroken. But how did this unremarkable rural village become the chess capital of medieval Europe? The answer lies in a remarkable encounter between an imprisoned nobleman, a community of simple farmers, and a game that would transform their fortunes forever. Join me as we explore the legend of the Chess Players of Ströbeck, a tale not of supernatural wonder, but of how a game of 64 squares saved a man's life, elevated a village, and created a legacy that has endured for nearly 1,000 years. To understand the legend of Ströbeck, we must first place ourselves in 11th century Germany, a time when the Holy Roman Empire was consolidating power across Central Europe. The region around Ströbeck was part of Saxony, with its distinctive culture and proud traditions. The Harz Mountains nearby were known for their silver mines, dense forests, and, in folklore, as a gathering place of witches and supernatural beings. Ströbeck itself was a small agricultural settlement, unremarkable among countless similar villages, founded sometime in the 10th century. Its people were primarily farmers, with lives dictated by the rhythms of planting and harvest, the demands of their feudal lords, and the teachings of the church. Life was demanding and horizons limited. Few villagers would ever travel beyond neighboring settlements. Education was minimal, reserved primarily for clergy and nobility. For common folk, knowledge was passed through oral tradition, practical apprenticeship, and the teachings of the parish priest. Chess, at this time, was primarily a nobleman's pursuit, a game that simulated warfare and strategy, played in castles and manors across Europe. The game had reached Germany by the 11th century, brought along trade routes from the Islamic world where it had been refined from earlier Indian and Persian versions. The pieces and some rules differed from modern chess. Movement was generally slower, with pawns unable to move 2 squares on their first move, and the queen, then called the vizier or counselor, limited to single diagonal steps. It was into this world, a village of farmers with little knowledge beyond their fields, in an age when social mobility was nearly unthinkable, that our story of unlikely chess masters begins. Our story begins around the year 1011, during the reign of Emperor Henry II of the Holy Roman Empire. Like many periods in medieval Germany, it was a time of power struggles and regional conflicts. According to the legend, a nobleman, most accounts name him as Count Gunzelin of Kuchenberg, was captured during one of these conflicts. The historical record does confirm that a Count Gunzelin was involved in a rebellion against the emperor around this time and was indeed imprisoned. Rather than being held in a royal castle, Count Gunzelin was sent to the small village of Ströbeck for safekeeping. This unusual choice may have been strategic, a remote location far from his allies, yet still within imperial territory. In Ströbeck, a modest tower served as the Count's prison. He was treated relatively well, as befitted his noble status, but the confinement was nevertheless complete and isolating. Far from the intellectual and cultural stimulation of court life, with only occasional visits from officials and the local villagers who brought his meals, the Count faced a dreary existence. To combat his isolation and boredom, Count Gunzelin had brought with him a chess set, a luxury item carved from fine materials, its pieces representing the medieval world order in miniature. In those long hours of solitude, the Count would set up the pieces and play against himself, moving from one side of the board to the other, imagining strategies and counter-strategies to pass the time. The villagers assigned to guard him and bring his meals observed this curious activity with growing interest. Having never seen such a game before, they began to ask questions about the pieces and their movements across the checkered board. Thus began an unexpected relationship that would transform both the Count's captivity and the village's destiny. What began as curious questions from the villagers soon developed into genuine interest. Count Gunzelin, perhaps lonely for conversation or seeing an opportunity to alleviate his boredom, began to explain the game in detail. He taught them the names and movements of each piece. The king, limited but essential. The queen, with her modest diagonal step. The bishops, knights, rooks, and pawns, each with their distinct capabilities and value. The villagers, those simple farmers, proved surprisingly apt pupils. Chess appealed to minds accustomed to thinking several seasons ahead, to planning for different contingencies of weather and harvest, to understanding the interplay of different elements in their agricultural world. Soon, the guards and servants were not merely watching the count play, but participating in games themselves. Crude sets were fashioned from available materials, carved wood, stone, clay, so that villagers could practice away from the tower. As word spread through Ströbeck, more villagers came to learn. Fathers taught sons, neighbors challenged neighbors, and a community of unexpected chess enthusiasts began to emerge in this remote German village. For Count Gunzelin, this development brought a radical transformation of his captivity. From isolated prisoner, he became a respected teacher. The villagers began to bring him small comforts, additional food, news from outside, and most importantly, companionship and intellectual stimulation through increasingly challenging games. A remarkable transformation was occurring, one that crossed the rigid social boundaries of medieval society. Noblemen and peasants, captor and captive, were finding common ground on the checkered battlefield where birth and status mattered less than strategy and foresight. After several months of chess instruction, something remarkable happened. The villagers of Ströbeck began to master the game. Some showed particular aptitude, developing strategies that surprised even their noble teacher. According to the legend, a pivotal moment came when word arrived that Count Gunzelin's fate had been decided. The emperor decreed that the rebellious nobleman was to be transferred to a more secure location, likely to face a harsher punishment, possibly execution. Faced with this dire news, the Count made an extraordinary proposal to his captors. He challenged the best chess players of Ströbeck to a match, with the highest possible stakes. If the village's finest player could defeat him, he asked that they petition the emperor for mercy on his behalf. It was an audacious wager. For the villagers to approach the emperor, the highest authority in the land, was almost unthinkable. For them to petition on behalf of a rebel nobleman was even more extraordinary. Yet the bonds formed over the chessboard had created a connection that transcended the normal social order. The villagers agreed to the Count's proposal, selecting their most skilled player for the challenge. The match, as described in local legend, was played in the village square, with the entire community watching. Count Gunzelin, the nobleman who had played chess his entire life, faced a farmer who had learned the game only months before. What happened next would determine not only the Count's fate, but would set Ströbeck on a unique historical path. The legendary match between Count Gunzelin and the Ströbeck champion was, by all accounts, a remarkable contest. The nobleman opened with established strategies known to educated players throughout Europe. To his surprise, the villager responded with innovative countermoves that demonstrated not merely rote learning but genuine understanding of chess principles. As the game progressed, a crowd of villagers watched in tense silence. Moves and countermoves unfolded across the board. The Count found himself genuinely challenged, forced to abandon his initial strategies and respond to unexpected developments. After hours of play, the unthinkable happened. The Ströbeck champion checkmated the nobleman's king. The farmer had defeated the Count at his own game. True to the agreement, the villagers petitioned the emperor on Count Gunzelin's behalf. Different versions of the legend offer varying accounts of what happened next. In some tellings, the emperor was so impressed by the villagers' skill at a nobleman's game that he granted their petition immediately. In others, he demanded proof of their abilities, challenging the village to a match against his own court players. What historical records do confirm is that Count Gunzelin's life was spared. Though he remained imprisoned for some time longer, he was eventually released and his lands partially restored. For the village of Ströbeck, this extraordinary episode brought unexpected rewards. According to local tradition, the emperor granted the village special privileges in recognition of their chess prowess and their loyalty to imperial authority in properly guarding their noble prisoner. These privileges included reduced taxation, certain legal rights, and most famously, the right to incorporate a chessboard into the village's coat of arms, a distinction that set Ströbeck apart from every other village in the empire and established its enduring identity as a community of chess players. In the years following the legendary match, Chess became more than just a game in Ströbeck. It became a central element of the village's identity and culture. Unlike other medieval pastimes that remained primarily recreational, chess in Ströbeck acquired an almost ritual significance. Fathers taught sons not merely as entertainment, but as an essential skill and a connection to the village's proud history.
Special local variants of the game developed, with distinctive rules and traditions unique to the community. Chess became integrated into major life events. Young men would demonstrate their chess abilities as part of courtship rituals. Village disputes might be settled over the board rather than through more contentious means. Annual competitions became important community events, bringing together all social classes in a shared tradition. The village's reputation spread throughout the region and eventually beyond. Travelers would sometimes detour to Ströbeck to witness the unusual sight of peasant farmers playing what was elsewhere considered a nobleman's game with remarkable skill. We have surviving records from later centuries that confirm the special status granted to Ströbeck. In 1651, Elector Frederick William of Brandenburg officially confirmed the village's traditional privileges and chess-related rights. Other documents reference earlier confirmations, supporting the core of the legend, even if certain details may have been embellished over time. Perhaps most remarkably, unlike many medieval traditions that faded with changing times, Ströbeck's chess culture proved enduring. As we shall see, it survived wars, political changes, and social transformations to remain a living heritage rather than merely a historical curiosity. To fully appreciate the Ströbeck story, we must understand how medieval chess differed from the modern game we know today. The game that Count Gunzelin taught the villagers was shatranj, the medieval European adaptation of the earlier Arabic game, which itself evolved from the Persian shatrang and ultimately the Indian chaturanga. The board and basic setup would be recognizable to modern players, but several crucial differences existed. The queen, then called the furs or vizier, could move only one square diagonally, making it much weaker than the modern queen. The bishop, known as the alfil, moved exactly 2 squares diagonally and could jump over intervening pieces. Pawns could move only 1 square on their first move, not 2 as in modern chess. There was no castling to bring the king to safety. The concept of stalemate was not standardized, with different regions considering it either a win, loss, or draw. These limitations made medieval chess a slower, more deliberate game than its modern counterpart. Pieces gradually maneuvered into position, with fewer long-range attacks possible. Games could last for hours, or even be continued across multiple days. The transformation toward modern chess began in the late 15th century, with rule changes originating in southern Europe that eventually standardized into today's game by the 18th century. Interestingly, Ströbeck developed its own variants, including courier chess, played on a larger 12x8 board with additional pieces. These local traditions existed alongside the evolving international standards, creating a rich and distinctive chess culture. What made the villagers' achievement all the more remarkable was that they mastered this complex game through oral instruction alone, without access to the chess manuals and strategy books available to educated nobles and wealthy merchants in medieval Europe. As Europe moved from the medieval period into the Renaissance and early modern era, Ströbeck's chess tradition not only survived, but flourished and gained wider recognition. By the 16th century, the village had established formal chess competitions that were renowned throughout the region. Travelers' accounts from this period express astonishment at finding sophisticated chess play in such a modest rural community. In 1515, Elector Frederick the Wise of Saxony presented the village with a special ceremonial chess set in recognition of their unique cultural tradition. This set, featuring elaborately carved pieces and exquisite craftsmanship, became a treasured community possession used for special matches and celebrations. The 30 Years' War won 618. 1648 brought devastation to much of Germany, including the Ströbeck region. Yet, remarkably, even during this traumatic period, villagers maintained their chess traditions. Some accounts suggest that chess provided a welcome distraction from the hardships of war and helped preserve community bonds during this fractured time. After the war, as we've seen, the tradition received renewed official recognition with the 1651 confirmation of privileges by Frederick William of Brandenburg. This document explicitly referenced the chess tradition and the village's historic coat of arms featuring a chessboard. By the 18th century, Ströbeck's reputation had spread far enough to attract the attention of scholars and chess enthusiasts from major European cities. The village became something of a pilgrimage site for chess players, curious to test their skills against the farmer masters
and learn the local variants that had developed there. Throughout these centuries of political change, war, and social transformation, the people of Ströbeck maintained their unique relationship with the game that had transformed their community's destiny. What makes the legend of Ströbeck truly remarkable is that unlike many medieval traditions that survive only in historical records, the village's chess culture remains vibrant to this day. Modern Ströbeck, now part of the town of Halberstadt in Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, still proudly identifies as the chess village.
The chessboard remains prominently featured in its coat of arms, just as it has for nearly 1,000 years.
Since 1823, chess has been a mandatory subject in the village school, surely the only place in the world where chess is a required part of the curriculum. Every student learns not only the modern international rules, but also the history of their community's special relationship with the game, and some of the traditional local variants. The tradition of ceremonial chess sets continues. In 1955, the village received a new ceremonial set to replace historical ones lost in the turmoil of World War II. This modern set is still used for special community matches and celebrations. Visitors to Ströbeck today can see giant chessboards in the village square, visit the chess museum established in 1991, and even participate in the annual chess festival that has evolved from the historic competitions of previous centuries. Perhaps most remarkably, some families in Ströbeck can trace their chess-playing lineage back through many generations, with family chess sets and knowledge of special moves passed down from parent to child in an unbroken tradition that connects them directly to that legendary match between Count Gunzelin and the village champion nearly a millennium ago.
As with many legends that stretch back nearly a millennium, the story of Ströbeck's chess origin invites us to consider the relationship between documented history and cultural memory. The core elements of the tale can be verified historically. Count Gunzelin was indeed a real nobleman who rebelled against Emperor Henry II and was imprisoned around 1011. Ströbeck did develop an extraordinary chess tradition that was formally recognized by later rulers. The village did incorporate a chessboard into its coat of arms, an extremely unusual heraldic element. However, some specifics of the story as it's been passed down through generations likely reflect embellishments and adaptations typical of oral tradition. The dramatic chess match with the Count's freedom at stake, the village champion's unlikely victory, and the immediate imperial recognition make for a compelling narrative, but may not precisely reflect historical events. What's particularly interesting is how the legend evolved to maintain its relevance. As chess itself changed from medieval to modern rules, the story adapted. As political authorities shifted from emperors to electors to modern governments, the narrative of official recognition was updated to include new confirmations of old privileges. Whether or not every detail happened exactly as tradition claims, what's undeniable is that something remarkable did occur in this small German village, something that created a cultural identity so powerful that it has endured through centuries of war, political change, and social transformation. In this sense, the legend of Ströbeck reminds us that historical truth encompasses more than just verifiable facts. It includes the meaning that communities attach to their past and how they carry that meaning forward through time. The story of Ströbeck, how a game taught by a captive count to simple village farmers created a legacy spanning a millennium, offers us several profound insights. First, it reminds us that knowledge and skill need not be confined by social boundaries. The medieval villagers who mastered a nobleman's game challenged the rigid hierarchies of their time through intellectual achievement rather than rebellion. Second, it demonstrates how a distinctive cultural practice can become a source of community identity and resilience. Through centuries of war, political change, and modernization, Ströbeck's chess tradition provided continuity and distinctiveness. Third, it reveals the power of legend to inspire and sustain real-world practices. Whether or not every detail of the Count Gunzelin story happened exactly as tradition claims, the tale itself became a cultural treasure that motivated generations to maintain and develop their chess heritage. Perhaps most remarkably, the legacy continues. In the village school, children still learn chess as part of their formal education. In the village square, games are still played on public boards. In homes and in the local tavern, Ströbeck residents still challenge each other and visitors to matches that echo that legendary contest between count and farmer nearly 1,000 years ago. In a world where many traditions fade with time, Ströbeck stands as a living reminder that sometimes the most enduring legacies come from unexpected sources. A game played on 64 squares, passed from a nobleman to peasants, preserved through centuries by a community that recognized its value.
When next we meet, we shall explore another forgotten legend, the tale of the drowned city of Yais, and how a king's daughter opened the floodgates that sent a magnificent Breton city beneath the waves. Until then, I am Osric the Tale-Binder, keeper of forgotten legends. Fare thee well.